In today's video, we're back with some updated NHL trade rumors concerning the Philadelphia Flyers, Buffalo Sabres, and Calgary Flames. Plus, we're going to discuss some potential landing spots for the now unrestricted free agent defenseman Kevin Shattenkirk, and a quick update on a Minnesota general manager search as well. We'll get into all the latest coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some more trade rumors as well as some other news around the NHL to discuss here today, and I want to get started with the Calgary Flames. Now, we've seen yesterday that they bought out defenseman Michael Stone from the final year of his contract, freeing up some cap space, but that still leaves them short to get forwards Matthew Tkachuk and Andrew Mangiapane under contract for the coming year to kind of complete their roster, and there's obviously a few different moves that they can make to free up some additional space. There's new reports surfacing now indicating that they're likely going to be aggressively shopping left winger Michael Frolik, who carries a cap hit of over $4 million, but is only paid an actual salary of $3 million for the coming season. Now, of course, his cap hit is based on the average annual value, but his actual salary is lower this year, and he can usually be banked upon for a solid 15 goals, can play in special teams, can be a pretty useful top 9 winger. So I think there's certainly teams out there who could use his services, but very well likely would try to take advantage of the Flames situation here and really not be offering a whole lot in return. Not sure that the Flames are really too concerned about the return, though. They need to free up the cap space to get these guys under contract, and he is the most likely target to be aggressively moved. Now, of course, they could move another defenseman, but since they've gone the route of buying out Stone, I think they very well might decide to stay put here with the current decor they have, not to lose too much experience back there. Obviously, some of their younger prospect D are going to get more playing time this year, have a chance to step up, get a bigger role. They don't want to have too much inexperience back there, so I mean, they could go that route, but I think the more likely target here is that they're going to aggressively push to move for a league to free up the additional space. I mean, that would get them closer to like the $11 million mark, which would then allow them to sign Tkachuk and have some left over to sign Mangiapane as well. So let me know what you think. Is Frolik the most likely target to be moved out of Calgary, or where might be some potential destinations that would make sense for him to land? Now, I want to take a quick look here at the Philadelphia Flyers salary cap situation as well. Now, they have a lot of defensemen. They've been rumored to be moving one for some time, but yet they haven't done so. They've acquired some extra defensemen and did some swapping out during this offseason. Of course, their blue line is going to look very different, but overall, they still have a lot of D. We've seen a lot of rumors before about Shane Gostisbehere, but nothing has come to be. I do believe they were shopping him, but just never got the return they were looking for, so they decided to go in different directions. And right now, they still need to sign RFA defenseman Ivan Provorov, as well as RFA forward Travis Konecny. Both of those guys have certainly proven to be valuable key pieces of their team moving forward. Getting both these guys under contract are vital for this team to get a better overall evaluation of what this team's salary cap situation is going to be moving forward. Now, right now, they have 8 NHL defensemen on their roster, including the new guys that they've acquired like Matt Niskanen and Justin Braun. Of course, they still have Provorov once he's under contract. They got Gostisbehere. They've also got youngsters Travis Sanheim, Philippe Myers, Robert Hagg, and Samuel Morin. Now, of course, the only one of these guys that is waivers exempt would be Philippe Myers. He would be able to go down to the minors without going through the waiver wire. But I was really under the impression that they were really happy with his progression last year and his development, and they really wanted to keep him on the NHL roster for the coming season. Now, he might end up being a victim here of the numbers game, or they very well could end up making another move on that blue line. Another guy in the minors with Nate Prosser, who's on a 2-year, 2-way deal. I mean, he's got over 400 NHL games. I know he's not likely to make the NHL roster based on what they already have on the blue line. He could certainly provide a lot of experience for their American Hockey League team and be a call-up option if they run into a rash of injuries, but they do have that down there, some extra depth with experience. So obviously they don't need to carry necessarily 8 defensemen. They very well could move one out here to free up a little bit of salary cap space and make sure that some of the younger guys like Myers get more of an opportunity here to play. I would think they probably wouldn't want to trade some youngsters that are really starting to develop, like Travis Sanheim or Samuel Morin, Philippe Myers. Maybe a Robert Hagg, would he possibly be a guy who could be a trade candidate? Although I have had reports here through The Athletic indicating that the Flyers are likely going to move a defenseman. It's just not quite clear who it's going to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be something they do right away. They're not in dire need of the cap space to get the other guys signed. But obviously, once they get Provorov and Konecny looked after, that is going to eat up a fair bit of the remaining salary cap space that they do have to work with. They could go into training camp, start to evaluate who makes the most sense to keep around and who might be the more likely target to be moved out. But I do expect between now and training camp to have the Flyers move another defenseman. Also seeing some reports out of the Buffalo News indicating that they may not be moving defenseman Rasmus Ristolainen here after all. And it's not that they haven't been trying. There is a lot of talk that they have been shopping him, but the fact that they've been looking for a number 2 center in return might be kind of causing some NHL teams to shy away. Although there does appear to be some interest in Ristolainen around the league. The Buffalo News report I was referencing here from Lance Lasowski indicates that from what he's talked around the league with all the different sources from different clubs he's talked to, that there's definitely interest. They like the fact that he's still young, he has term on his contract, which provides cost certainty, and there's still a lot of teams that believe he could continue to improve and be well worth the contract. There's just not much out there right now that seems to be like wanting to give up a number 2 center iceman. Now, the Sabres also don't necessarily have to go that route. It depends on how quickly they want to accelerate this rebuild. They do have some youngsters like Mittelstadt and of course the newly drafted Dylan Cousins, who very well could provide that number 2 center spot in the short term, in the next year or two, once they get a little bit more experience and work up to that. So they don't really need anybody there for too long, of course, provided that these guys develop into what they're expected to be. So they very well would be more likely to go with moving Sam Reinhart down to the second line and maybe moving him off the wing with Jack Eichel, putting another player there. I mean, youngster Victor Olofsson is likely expected to make this team in a training camp and very well could grab a top 6 role, at least to start the year, to see if he can hang on to it and if he can produce at a pretty decent level, in a top 1 or 2 lines. So that very well might balance their attack out a little bit better anyhow. Maybe they could save from trading Ristolainen for the time being until they can maybe get a better return. Hopefully they can see some improvements in his game this year, maybe boost his value, and if they still decide that maybe boosting that center ice depth is something they want to do, then they could go down that route a little bit later. But with moving Reinhart down to the second line center role does also increase the other possibility that they could target a different type of player, just like a top 6 winger, not necessarily a center iceman. So either way, right now it seems as though there is interest around the league in Ristolainen. Teams just are not willing to pay the high asking price that Jason Botterill and the Sabres are looking for. So it does seem more likely than not that he goes into the season as a member of the Buffalo Sabres here, in my opinion. Something could always change, of course. A team could step up and make an offer that they really like, but right now they're just not seeming to be there. So I think he likely goes into the year with the Sabres, and depending on how things go, maybe we see a trade down the line, maybe we don't. Maybe they see enough out of him that they want to keep him in the full longer term, and that very well could happen as well. So let me know what you think. Does Rasmus Ristolainen stick it out here with Buffalo? Maybe do they move Sam Reinhart down to the second line, balance out that attack, or do they still continue to try to trade him to obtain a top 6 forward, whether it be a center or a winger? Now, of course, the newly bought out Kevin Shattenkirk is now an unrestricted free agent, something he likely wasn't planning on being this summer, but he's obviously looking for work around the NHL. Now, of course, things did not go well for him during his time with the Rangers, which is unfortunate. I know it's a dream of his to play with the Rangers. He grew up in the New York area, was a fan of the Rangers for a long time before getting to the NHL, so I'm sure he's probably crushed in a way that it didn't work out, and they had to buy him out of the final 2 years of his contract. But at the same time, he's looking to move on for a new opportunity, and hopefully he'll be hungry to kind of reprove himself. And because of that buyout and the fact he's going to have other income, another NHL team can likely swoop in and sign him on a shorter term, cheaper deal. I would say probably no more than 1 to 2 years, for probably no more than maybe a couple million per year at most. He might be able to get a little bit more than the veteran, 1 year, $1 million. But I do think Shattenkirk will be signed to a contract, and somebody will give him an opportunity before training camp hits. I mean, he could end up going in on a professional tryout with the team if a contract doesn't materialize over the next few weeks. But I do think a team will step up and take a chance. Now, a couple teams that to me make a lot of sense to target him would be one, the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, the Winnipeg Jets have absolutely lost a lot on that blue line this summer. They've lost a lot through free agency here, and they really could use a right shot defenseman. Now, I know he's not the type of player right now at this stage of his career that can log like super big minutes. He's not an elite defensive defenseman, so he's not going to help that way. But for him to come in and even play third pair minutes and help a lot with the power play could certainly go a long way to some teams around the league. Obviously, he's been known as an offensive-minded defenseman who's really good in the power play his entire NHL career. If nothing else, that would likely be the part of his game that should be able to rebound the most here to allow him to be productive and be helpful to a team. So I think a team like Winnipeg, once they get Laine and Connor situated, of course, because they don't know exactly what that's going to cost, the Winnipeg Jets have really been pretty quiet. There hasn't been a whole lot of moves out of Winnipeg, not a lot of news regarding their RFAs either, so it's really tough to get an inside scoop on what's really going on in Winnipeg, but I do think that he makes a lot of sense for what they need after what they've lost. And another team to look to, I think, would be the Nashville Predators as well. Of course, they are a team who struggled to score a bit last year. Their power play was dreadful, worse than the NHL, and they traded PK Subban this offseason to shed some salary cap space. Obviously, that $9 million contract has gone a long ways to kind of help him reshape the team a little bit, but at the same time, I don't think the power play is necessarily going to get better without him, without bringing in a different kind of player who can help with that. And not that Shattenkirk's their absolute top of your list option, but when you look around the NHL and what could be available that's not going to cost you too much and really break the bank, he certainly fits that bill and comes to mind. So I could see a fit with him in the Nashville Predators. I mean, obviously right now, Dante Fabro is likely expected to step in and take a top 4 role with the subtraction of Subban here from the roster, which he likely can do and play more of a two-way game and log more of the bigger minutes. But I could see Shattenkirk maybe making sense there on a third pair type of basis. Less money, play the power play, and just really help them with the offensive side of the game, kind of be a specialty kind of player. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I can certainly see Poile and the Predators at least considering that. But let me know what you think down below. Where are some good landing spots for Kevin Shattenkirk? What teams make the most sense who really should inquire about his services on a short-term contract? Other tidbits here on the Minnesota Wild GM search from Michael Russo of The Athletic. He indicates that 2 guys have already had interviews here over the last day or two. That includes former Flyers GM Ron Hextall and former GM of the Edmonton Oilers and Boston Bruins, Peter Chiarelli. So yes, both of those guys have now been interviewed. Of course, there's plenty more candidates that they intend to talk to, so it's really difficult to say when we'll get an announcement on who it's going to be. I do expect it to take probably at least a few weeks, likely most of the month of August, but I would suspect that before things get too heavily underway in September, that person's in place in their new position. Of course, former NHLer Mike Modano, who's now working with the Wild, is heavily involved with this GM search as well, helping out Craig Leopold in regards to finding the right guy. Obviously, he kind of wishes when he hired Paul Fenton and he had somebody more on the hockey side of things, like Modano, involved with that search, but of course he didn't do that at the time. So now having Modano there will certainly give him a different perspective on things to kind of make sure they choose the right guy, because they really can't afford to get this wrong after having a GM like Fenton only on the job for 14 months. And really, the moves he made could have potentially set them back. They really need some clear direction with how this team is going to go for the future. If you look at Fenton's moves, some of them indicated he was heading towards a rebuild, and yet others seemed like he was kind of just maybe making a few minor moves to kind of retool and still go on and go for it, trying to be a playoff team. Obviously, this is kind of confusing. I don't think he really had a clear-cut direction on which way he was heading, and just made a lot of bizarre things happen in Minnesota, had some bizarre comments. Obviously, we heard a lot about how he treated people and whatnot, and difficult to work with, all that kind of stuff. So obviously, it turned out to be a very bad move for the Wild, and hopefully they can rebound here and not be set back too badly from that hire. Hextall and Chiarelli are already interviewed, and even if you're saying, Chiarelli would be terrible, he's got a bad track record after the time in Edmonton, and you know what, that probably is right. It doesn't mean he's going to be hired, but I've seen some cases online, people saying, even if you don't think he's the best fit, sometimes it's wise just to get a variety of opinions and hear what people think of your team, just to get a lot of ideas going on how you need to go about taking things in the next steps here. So doesn't mean Chiarelli's going to be hired. To be honest, I'd be quite surprised if he was. I wouldn't think that he would be the guy they're looking for. I think Hextall potentially could be a good choice, but as I expressed the other day, I do have some concerns about him and ownership. Maybe not clashing the best, because Minnesota ownership does appear to be a little bit impatient and want to get a winning product on the ice. So I guess we will see. But for right now, we know for sure those 2 guys are definitely been interviewed and are under consideration. And lastly here, I want to take a look at some of the restricted free agents who have arbitration rights but are not settled and signed as of yet. As I record this video on August the 2nd, Linus Ullmark of the Buffalo Sabres is still outstanding. I'm not sure the exact time of day that his hearing was supposed to take place. So as I record this, that hearing may already be underway or be finished. So we should have a contract on Ullmark and the Sabres here very shortly. Besides him, we have 4 other players who are still awaiting their hearing, which are coming up on August the 4th. So usually within 1 to 2 days after the hearing, we get the results and the announcements are made. So I'd say by August 5th or 6th, we should have all these guys looked after and under contract. Now, according to information from Elliot Friedman, he's kind of list here where the player's asking point is versus what the team is offering in these cases. So let's take a quick look based on the information he put on Twitter. As you can see, Buffalo Sabres defenseman Jake McCabe apparently is looking for a contract in the range of $4.3 million, where the team is offering $1.95. I think Jake McCabe is looking for a lot of money. It's kind of surprising to see him ask for that much. And I do think the team likely stands a better chance to win. So I don't imagine it'll be exactly what the team is offering. Could be a little bit more, but I think it'll be closer to the 1.95 than the 4.3. Of course, the Nashville Predators and Rocco Grimaldi are a ways apart as well. He's looking for a contract of $1.275 million, where the team's offering $700K, which appears to be a 2-way deal as well. Obviously, they're a little closer than McCabe and the Sabres, but still a bit of a gap there to bridge. Maybe they end up settling somewhere near the middle, around 9.50, something along those lines. Of course, the Carolina Hurricanes and goalie Anton Forsberg are not nearly as far apart. Again, he's looking for a contract at $833,000, and they're offering $700K, and I believe that contract would need to be a two-way deal as well. So obviously, that's $133,000 apart, and whether or not it's a two-way deal or one-way deal could impact the outcome there too. So that's another one. And then lastly but not least, we get the St. Louis Blues and defenseman Joel Edmondson. Apparently, he's looking for $4.2 million, and they're offering around $2.3 million, which obviously is a fairly big gap, almost $2 million. Of course, Joel Edmondson, I don't think is worth $4 million. Edmondson was even on scratch at times in the playoffs as we got deeper into the Stanley Cup Finals. I'm not sure that he's really going to be a $4 million, like a third Paragon guy. I don't see that happening. So I do see the outcome of that being closer to what the Blues have in mind here, and I do think that longer term, I can see Edmondson being a prime trade candidate here for the Blues potentially as well. And as I've discussed before, a lot of these players who end up going through the arbitration process, a high percentage of them end up being moved away from their team, whether it be through trade or when they become UFA or whatever. In a couple of years' time, a high percentage of them are no longer with the same organization. I think that process at times is very strenuous on the relationship. So let me know what you think on those players and where those contracts likely end up. Of course, as always, want to hear your thoughts and opinions on the other trade talk and stuff that we discussed here today. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section, and we will continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.